Today's video is a special request by a user named Lock34. I would put the message up here, but apparently they don't like their regular name. To summarize though, today we're going to do a set review of the Shining Force EXA booster. Instead of just looking at 10 cards like I normally do, we're actually going to look at the 12 cards that I found interesting in the set. For those who haven't watched my set reviews before, we're not necessarily going to look at the 12 best cards, we're going to look at the 12 cards that to me kind of define the set and what it's trying to do. If the video gets a lot of positive feedback and it's in demand, then we'll do another video looking at more cards. I'm not gonna front. This set has some of the worst cards I've ever seen. Not all of the cards are bad, mind you. Like, the set itself, and as a whole, isn't like the worst set I've ever seen, but it's got some of the worst card designs I think I've ever seen in any set. To the point where I'm actually considering doing a follow-up video to this one, where I just look at the top 12 most curiously bad cards in the Shining Force set. That's a totally serious thing. If you guys want to see that, then put it in the comments section below. Otherwise, I'll just leave it alone. But enough filler. Let's get to the cards. The first card we'll look at is Toma Chosen One, and Toma Chosen One kind of defines what the unique element of the Shining Force set is. A lot of the Shining Force cards play around the idea of if this card is a higher level than its battle opponent, it gets some kind of special effect. It's normally a power boost, not normally that strong, mainly like 1000 to 2000. But because of this, there are a lot of assist cards that actually increase characters' level rather than just giving them power. While the idea itself is very interesting, they don't actually go anywhere that interesting with it. It's normally just a power boost, and just power boosts aren't normally that good. The only thing that the mechanic can actually get around is suicide heavy decks. And honestly, suicide's not really seen in the game past level 1. It also has a Climax combo going for it. If Holy Sword Shining Force is in the Climax zone, then you can send one of your opponent's cards to their hand when this card attacks, and that's actually really cool too, mainly because the effect itself is free. The next two cards I have to talk about at the same time because they're important to each other. Toma and Zenis' effect is you can pay 3, and when this card is being front attacked, you can pretty much change it into Cyril and Witch Hat. This is unique for a couple of reasons. The first being, it's a change effect, but it happens in reaction to something your opponent is doing rather than during one of your phases. This is delicious because this means your opponent has to make a choice. If it's going to front attack and kill this card, it has to worry about whether or not you're going to switch it out with Cyril and Witch Hat. This can lead to a lot of neat bluffs. It can lead to your opponent being too afraid to attack, so leaving it alive, letting Toma and Zenis getting a lot of stock for you. Keeping it alive for 2 or 3 turns means you get 2 or 3 stock off of a free card. If your opponent takes the bluff and you do have Cyril and Witch Hat in your hand, then all of a sudden they have to deal with a level 2 that is 8,000, possibly 10,000. And their character is going to be reversed and die. Toma and Zenis is my favorite card in yellow, and if I were going to build a deck involving yellow, I'd probably build it around him. Cyril and Witch Hat also just happens to be one of the strongest beaters in the set. If you have 2 or fewer characters in play, then this gets plus 2000 power. Mainly what that means is if you don't have any support in play, then this gets plus 2000 power, because you want to have a full front row. Honestly, if you're running Cyril and Witch Hat as your main beater and you get all 3 of them in play, then you don't really need any assist anyway. They're all going to be 10,000 natural. Or you can have 2 Cyril and Witch Hat and then 1 assist backing them up, like a per level assist or something. Red is arguably one of the stronger colors in the deck, and this is one of the most interesting cards I found. All your other loyalty characters you have plus 5, blah blah blah, whatever. The main effect I want to look at is its second effect, where you can pay 4 stock, rest this, and deal 6 damage to your opponent. First thing I'm going to say is Shining Force EXA is capable of getting a lot of stock very quickly. Having something like this to spend it on is amazing, especially because you can use this at any point in the game to get yourself an advantage. A lot of you are looking at this thinking, oh, but you're going to get Climax cancelled immediately. 6 is too much damage to deal at once. A couple of things with that. First, you want to get Climax cancelled. You want to get those Climaxes out of the way. If you Climax cancel now, then when your attacks go through, you're capable of dealing even more damage without having to worry about getting Climax cancelled. Second, if you're watching your opponent's waiting room and you notice they have like 5, 6, 7-ish climaxes there already and their deck is still pretty thick, you can level them up immediately with this effect pretty much. Even if they have 0 in the clock, if you use this effect and it goes through successfully, if they clock to draw at the beginning of their turn, they automatically level up, or your attacks during that turn are going to level them up. Paying 4 to level up your opponent is no small effect, especially if you get 2 of these in play and you can pull it off twice, which is never going to happen. You're never going to be lucky enough to pull it off twice in one turn, but if you did, that's pretty much 2 level ups immediately. Riem Queen of Furlant is actually a very cool card, and let's look at it step by step. First, it has a Climax combo where you can pay 2 when you play its Climax, and you can search your deck for a level 2 or lower demon and put it in your hand. That's all well and good. It's a searcher. Searchers are good. I'd prefer if it put it in play, but it puts it in your hand, so, whatever. But its second effect is what I really want to look at. It has Encore, but its Encore is you discard a Climax to your waiting room. Now, I know what you're thinking. The effect is stupid. And yes, the effect is really stupid. But there are some cards in red that actually kind of work around the idea of having a lot of Climax cards in your waiting room. And that's why I find it so interesting. It's not necessarily good, but it's interesting that there are Encores that discard Climaxes instead of characters. This is another interesting little card that has to deal with Climaxes. It's level 0 Brainstorm, costs 2, you have to rest for it, and you flip over the top 4 cards of your library, and for each Climax, you put a Climax in your hand. So pretty much its effect is you flip over the top 4 cards of your deck, and you put all the Climaxes in your hand. And I don't necessarily know if that's good per se, but it's a really interesting effect because it increases hand size, and normally the discarded Climaxes are something that you don't want, so it gives you some kind of good effect to make up for them, but in this case, it's almost like you're trying to get to the Climaxes because they increase your hand size. And then, of course, if you're dealing with a lot of Climax combos in your deck, this is a great way to make sure that you have the Climaxes in your hand so you can immediately do the Climax effects right afterwards. Getting on to blue, in my opinion, blue is the most powerful color in all of Shining Force EXA. If I were personally going to build Shining Force EXA decks, I would probably build red-blue. I would use blue to gather the stock with cards like this, and then red for power. By paying 2 and resting this card, you can search for a weapon character and put it in your hand every single turn. That is so much hand advantage, it's not even funny, but it is a little bit costly. If you don't want to search for anything, you can actually choose cards from your hand and put them in the stock, and that's a free effect. This is probably the main way I'd use it, is every turn I would just use it to guarantee myself 1 free stock, and then burst all of the stock on something else. You're giving up support power because this card definitely has to be in the back row for its effect to be useful, but that's still a really neat effect for a level 0 support to have. Cyril changing clothes is hilarious. First of all, it has kind of a support-ish ability where once per turn when one of your characters is being attacked, you can choose that character and give it plus 1000 power, which is actually kind of decent, especially if you have 2 of these in play. That means that you can give one character plus 2000 power if they need it, or you can give one of the characters plus 1000 power and then another character plus 1000 power, so on and so forth. It's pretty good, not necessarily that great. And its second effect is whenever the damage dealt by one of your characters, any of them, just any of your characters, is cancelled, you can pay the cost of 2 and heal your clock. Multiple heals at level 1? Oh! That effect is so amazing, it makes me tear up a little bit. It's like you attack with a character and your opponent's like, ho ho, a climax counter, and you're like, okay, heal, heal, heal. It's even better because if you have 2 of these in play, then when your opponent climax cancels, you can trigger the effect twice and heal 2 from the clock every time you get canceled. It's just such a delicious slap in the face because getting climax canceled is one of those things that's supposed to suck, but this is a card that turns getting climax canceled into an advantage for you. You're over here like, okay, swing for 3. Man, I hope I get canceled. I hope I get canceled. I hope I get canceled. Yes! Heal 2 from the clock. Cyro Cateard is adorable. And that's the only reason we chose it. It's adorable. It doesn't actually have good effect. Just kidding, it has an amazing effect. It has a climax combo where if Cyril's Truth is in play, you have to pay 3 when this card attacks. And if you do, if you have a level 2 or higher weapon character, which is pretty much most of the Toma characters, you can choose 2 cards, any cards in your clock, and put them in the waiting room. If this set had decent change, then that would be the best effect in the entire deck. But it doesn't, so whatever. It's 2 heals, and all you have to do is play the climax, pay 3, and have one of the Toma cards in play. The healing that the Shining Force set is capable of is just beautiful. And if you happen to have 9 stock lying around and you have 3 Cyril cat ears in play, then you're healing for 6. Which I don't know if healing for 6 all the time is necessarily useful, but it's possible. You can do it, and that's what matters. The blue level 3 is a healing, obviously. I mean, so far, Cyril does nothing but heal. When you put this card in play, you can heal the top card of your clock. But its main effect is its second one. When you put this card in play, then you can pay 3, and if you do, choose 2 of your opponent's level 2 or lower characters, and those characters cannot stand during your opponent's stand phase. This effect can actually decisively make your opponent not be able to win the game. A lot of decks rely on level 2s to finish the game, or they swing with just like level 0s, trying to get as much damage as quickly as possible at level 3. If your opponent attacks you with a couple of level 2s and the level 2s stay in play, especially if they're encore targets, and you make it so they can't stand, then you take away your opponent's ability to deal damage to you. If your opponent does want to deal damage to you, then either they need to switch them out with characters in the back row and suicide their back row off, or they need to get rid of those characters forcefully to put new characters in play so that they can attack, making them lose advantage. This card isn't good all of the time, but the times that it is good, it can pretty much guarantee you a match. Last, we're going to look at green. Green doesn't have anything good in it. Green is the worst color in Shining Force EXA. But a couple of its events are kind of funny, so we're going to look at them. First of all is this one, and I just kind of like this card because it lets you do everything. You look at your opponent's hand, you get to choose one of their characters and make it minus 1,000 power for the turn. You get to choose one character from your clock and heal it back into your hand, and then immediately play it if you want to, but, you know, that's something real. And this card goes to the memory so it doesn't clog up your deck when you have to refresh. It's just so much for an event to do on level 2. I think it's kind of hilarious. Pursuer is another card that kind of shows just how much stock the Shining Force EXA set is capable of. When your opponent is front attacking a character that you know is going to die, you can play this card and then that character and this card both become stock. So even though your character is going to lose the battle, your stock is going to go up by 2. And you would have lost the battle anyway, so who cares? Keep in mind your opponent still doesn't get to deal the extra damage for attacking an open space because when they declared the attack, the space wasn't open. So there's really no downside. This is just a great card. And sadly, this is the best card in green. That's pretty much it for my set review of the cards. The set as a whole, I'll be honest, the set isn't really that good. Like, it's got a lot of really neat things working for it, especially the healing stuff. The healing and the stock gain are probably the best thing about Shining Force, and if you're going to build a competitive deck, the things that you need to focus on. I'm sad to say that if you are a fan of the main characters, Toma and Cyril, Toma's cards aren't very good, except for that one yellow card I was talking about before, but overall, Toma cards aren't really that good at all. I'm sorry. Cyril cards are good, Toma cards aren't. I don't know how this set did when it first came out. I noticed a severe lack of 7,000 cost 1, so this had to have been one of the early sets. And honestly, even for one of the early sets, this deck isn't very good. It still stands above a lot of other decks. In particular, Gargantia, obviously, everybody hates Gargantia. Probably Haruhi after the nerf. That's pretty much it. That's all I can really think of that this deck might be a little bit stronger than. Overall, what I'm trying to say is, if you are going to play the Shining Force EXA set, then you have to accept that your wins are going to be a little bit more challenging than your opponents are. And that's about all I have to say. If you enjoyed this video, then it would really help me out if you left me a thumbs up. Leave your thoughts on Shining Force in the comments section below, along with any suggestions on what you want me to do next. And finally, if you found this video by accident, then subscribe to stay up to date on the latest Kudo news. Until next time, Weiss fans.